The Death Cure by James Dashner. Chapter 1. It was a smell that began to drive Thomas slightly mad. Not being alone for over 3 weeks. Not the white walls, ceiling, and floor. Not the lack of windows, or the fact that they never turned off the lights. None of that. They'd taken his watch. They fed him the same exact meal 3 times a day. Slob of ham, mashed potatoes, raw carrots, slice of bread. Water. Never spoke to him. Never allowed anyone else in the room. No books, no movies, no games. Complete isolation. For over 3 weeks now, though he'd begun to doubt his track of time, which was based purely on instinct. He tried to best guess when night had fallen, made sure he only got slept when it felt like normal hours. The meals helped, though. They didn't seem to come regularly, as if he was meant to feel disoriented, alone. In a padded room, devoid with color, the only expectations, a small, almost hidden stainless steel toilet in the corner, and an old wooden desk that Thomas had no use for. Alone in an unbearable silence, with unlimited time to think about the disease rooted inside him, the flare. That was silent, creeping virus that slowly took away everything that made a person human. None of this drove him crazy. But he stank, and for some reason, that set his nerves onto a sharp wire, cutting into a solid block of his sanity. They didn't let him shower or bathe, hadn't provided him with a change of clothes since he had arrived, or anything to clean his body with. A simple rag would have helped. Could dip it in the water they gave him to drink and clean his face at least. But he had nothing, only the dirty clothes he had been wearing when they locked him away. Not even bedding. He slept all curled up, his butt wedged in a corner of the room, arms folded, trying to hug some warmth into himself, often shivering. He didn't know why the stench of his own body was the thing that scared him the most. Perhaps that in itself was a sign that he had lost it. But for some reason, his deodorizing hygiene pushed against his mind, causing horrific thoughts. Like he was rotting, decomposing his insides, turned as rancid as his outside felt. Beginning to believe that his unceasing stench represented death rushing in, about to swallow him whole. Those dark thoughts, in turn, were starting to make him wonder if Teresa hadn't been lying after all. That last time they'd spoken, when she said it was too late for Thomas, that instant that he had scrambled to the fair rapidly, and became crazy and violent. He had already lost his sanity before coming to this awful place. Even Brenda had warned him that things were about to get bad. Maybe they'd both been right, and underneath it all was the worry for his friends. What had happened to them? Where are they? What was the flare doing to their minds? After everything they'd been subject to, was this how it was all going to end? The rage creeped in, like a shivering rat looking for a spot of warmth, a crumb of food. And with every passing day came with an increasing anger so intense that Thomas sometimes caught himself shaking uncontrollably before he'd reeled the fury back in and pocketed in. He didn't want to go away for good. He only wanted to store it and let it build. Wait for the right time, the right place to unleash it. Wicked had done all this to him. Wicked had taken his life and those of his friends and were using them for whatever purpose they deemed necessary, no matter the consequences. And for that they would pay. Thomas swore this to himself 1,000 times a day, and these things went through his mind as he sat back against the wall, facing the door, and the ugly wooden desk in front of it. And what he had guessed was the late morning of his 22nd day as a captive in a white room. He always did this, after eating breakfast, after exercising, hoping against hope that the door would actually open all the way. The whole door, not just a little slot of the bottom, through which they had slid his meals. He had already tried countless times to get the door open himself, and the desk doors were empty, nothing there but the smell of mildew and cedar, and looked every morning just in case something might have magically appeared while he slept. Those things happen sometimes when you are dealing with wicked. And so he sat, running at that door, waiting, white walls and silence, the smell of his own body, left to think about his friends. Mino, Newitt, Frappan, and the other few gladers still alive. Brenda and George, who'd vanished from sight after their rescue on the giant berg. Harriet and Sona, and some of the other girls from Group B. Eris, about Brenda, and her warning to him after he'd woken up in the white room the first time. How she'd spoken in his mind. Was she on his side or not? But most of all, he thought about Teresa. He couldn't get her out of his head, even though he hated her a little more with every passing moment. Her last words to him had been wicked as good. And right or wrong, to Thomas, she'd come to represent all the terrible things that happened. Every time he thought of her, rage boiled inside him. Maybe all that anger was the last thing tethering him to sanity as he waited. Eat, sleep, exercise, thirst for revenge. That was what he did for 3 more days, alone. On the 26th day, the door opened.